Hey everybody, this is Ryan Cozy at the Chapel. I hope and pray that everybody is doing well today. Hey, I wanted to just take a few moments today and reflect on a couple of things that I've personally been learning over this last year. As many of you know, this last September I began trying to undertake the leadership role of circle groups, and just in this last school year I've learned a ton, and hopefully those learnings have been helpful in some measure to a handful of folks that are providing leadership for circle groups. But above and beyond that, I wanted to reflect on some of the learnings that I've experienced relative to walking a group through the discipleship resource that we value here at the chapel. And so I wanted to just take a few moments and talk about some of those learnings. Number one, I felt like we had a relational win this year as a group. So our group started this past fall, and we didn't know each other super well. It was a group that was formed out of relationships that we had in some measure through just different pockets of the church and in the community. And so we just said, hey, let's go on a journey together. And what we found was, as we began to talk about the things that this discipleship resource was pointing us toward, spiritual formation and missional behavior. And on the spiritual formation side, we were talking about intimacy with God and Christ-like relationships, discovering and using your spiritual gifts, and discovering and utilizing your story of grace. Those were things we began to talk about regularly through the teachings of each of the sessions of the resource. And also in missional behavior, you'll know that if you've gone through the discipleship resource, there's the back end of that talks about just missional living through the My Circle training, and specifically talking about identifying, praying, engaging, and sharing the gospel with people that you have relationship with, that you long to see come to know Christ, that are not following the Lord yet. So as we began to talk about those things, our relational watermark with folks in that group, it went deeper. And that was something that we were really excited about. And so that was a win for us to go through this discipleship resource, spending quality time with one another, and realizing, hey, as we talk about these things that we're trying to pursue, and we're being vulnerable with one another, we're being open with one another about how we're doing well at those things, or we may be struggling with those things, we just found this is big. This is really a relational win for us. The second thing was, I felt like we had a discipleship win. And let me explain that more clearly. I feel like our group is now in a position of understanding what it is that is being asked of us at the chapel. If we make the chapel our home, if it's chapel at Crosspoint, chapel at Lockport, chapel at Cheektowaga, it doesn't matter. If you call the chapel home, you're the place where you engage in the act of worship on a Sunday morning, and you go out from there and try to be living on mission, we feel like we have a very clear understanding through this training and this resource of this is what's being asked of us. And so I'd like to think that we also, in addition to understanding it, that we're reflecting it more. So as we begin to comprehend, oh, this is the mission we're trying to follow God on, we now begin to reflect that mission. And so there are things that are growing in our lives. It may be intimacy with God. It may be having deeper relationships. It may be we're finally understanding or getting a clearer sense of our gift mix. Or maybe we have the ability to articulate our story better, and the story of the gospel better. And it's also been found very clearly in the missional behaviors. I mean, the reality is we've seen some really cool things happen with people in our group, myself included, where people are engaged relationally with those that are unconvinced of the gospel. Some have even been able to see people come to church. Some have been able to clearly articulate the gospel, and there are some that are now they're walking with the Lord, and that's just a very exciting thing for us. And so I think that we began to understand, as we comprehend what a disciple is, we begin to reflect that a little bit more clearly as it relates to what we value in joining God on His mission and being part of the chapel, the expression of the bride of Christ that is known as the chapel. So that was a real exciting thing for us. We've seen relational wins, we've seen discipleship wins, and then we've also had a couple of learnings. One is I'm a big fan of the fellowship of the meal. And our group did not start by having a meal together, but we quickly found that as we broke bread and had a meal with one another, There was something disarming about the fellowship of a meal. It just allowed us to almost like take a deep breath, reflect on the week, talk about what's going well, talk about what you might be struggling with. Something happens when you eat good food together and you just talk about life. And I realize that we're all very busy, but if you can carve out some margin and enjoy the fellowship of a meal, I think you'll be really surprised at how that helps the group dynamic. Now, some of you may already be in that place, but I know that there are a number of groups that don't participate in that. And I just think that maybe that's something, as we've learned, it's enhanced the quality of our group, and it's not neglected us setting a missional edge at all. In fact, I think it's helped us quite a bit. You know, if you have that margin, I would just ask you to prayerfully consider it if you're not doing it already. And then lastly, one of the great learnings from this, you know, in being more relational and being reflecting discipleship, I think we've got a really cool community. We like to do stuff with one another. We like to live life with one another, and that, you know, is most recently reflected. We went on a camping trip as a circle group a couple weeks ago, and our group is not just all married couples. We got a few married couples. I think 3 married couples that together we have 9 kids total out of those 3 married couples, different ages. But then in addition to that, we also have a number of singles that are in different seasons of life. We have an older single, we've got some middle-aged singles, we've got some young professional singles. It's really cool to kind of see this group come together. And just the idea that we could go camping, we could go on a hike, we can have meals together around a campfire, we could listen to music together. I mean, these are all very meaningful things to us as a group, and it's just increased our appreciation for the depth of community that we've been able to forge through circle groups here at the chapel. If this is something you'd like to learn a little bit more about, or maybe these ideas help to spawn creativity, I'm going to try to drip feed some more ideas over the summer of things that I've personally been learning, or even books that I've been reading that give us some good ideas on how to enhance community, but with a key thing. We want to enhance community, but we never want to divorce it from setting the missional edge that God desires for us to have in joining Him on Missio Dei, His mission in this region. So I pray that this is helpful. I pray that your circle groups are going well. Feel free to contact me with any thoughts, questions, or concerns that you have. I can be most easily reached by email at rkozey@thechapel.com. God bless you.